might be a Viking or a Saxon or a Roman, but tell me, do you like 'em? Would you sex 'em? Would you bone 'em? Would you go to bed with King Ethelred? Would you bonk William the Conqueror romp in the sheets with Samuel Pepys? Mussolini was a mean, he led a fascist insurrection, but does he make you creamy? Does he give you an erection? Would you pork Richard the Duke of York? Does a boner start when you think of Bonaparte? Are you sexually aroused at the thought of Pol Pot? Historical hot or not?
Hello and welcome to Historical Hot or Not, the pod parchment that looks at the life and times of history's most celebrated figures and asks, yes, but would you? It's the history pod with the hottest bod, the sex podcast that's great in a sack, the show about the past that'll make you want to finger blast. I am your co-host Aidan McCaffrey. I am not a historian, and this is...
Catherine Mather, who is also not a historian.
Kath, we are recording this here podcast on October the 5th, 2022. Putin is on the back foot in the war in Ukraine and is threatening to use nuclear weapons. So there very well might not be a world left by the time we release this podcast in November or December. Or if there is, this bit that I'm doing will have dated very, very badly. Kath, in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, what do you think your role will be?
I don't think I would survive well. I think I'd probably be the one that got eaten first. I don't think I'd bring much to the table.
You're quite thin though, or you're relatively slim, so you might not be the first, because they'll probably go for someone with a bit more meat on them, who will provide less opportunity for physical strength.
Yeah, but you see, the problem is that people assume that like overweight people would be the best to go for because there's a lot, but it's all fat, which you can't eat really. So you need someone who's muscular to get to the good food if you're going to eat somebody.
But you're still safe there. You're
Yeah.
neither fat and not muscular. You're just a wafy in between.
Yeah, I'm just kind of here. So I don't know. I guess maybe I would be the joker of the pack that sort of kept morale high. I can run quite fast in short bursts, so I don't know. I guess I'd be bait. Perhaps.
You can probably run across fields to get water from a well while being shot at, but because you're fast, you survive.
And I can carry heavy things, and I can make things. I guess I did my degree in making things, so
Make a TARDIS like you did for your university project.
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be great use in the apocalypse.
Yeah, a random man came up to me at a gig and just went, "I liked your TARDIS. Did you keep it?" And I'd forgotten that I'd made that series of videos because it was it was about 5 years ago. And he was a stranger. So, I guess it was nice. It's nice to see that it's still bringing joy to the masses.
Hi, Catherine. I'm your biggest fan.
What would your role be, post-apocalypse?
What I wanted to do, I want to be the guy with the flame-throwing guitar in the Mad Max Fury Road who just sits on the back of a truck playing it. But the problem is, I have dry skin, so I use a lot of paraffin-based moisturiser. I would be a real fire hazard to myself. I think the first chord that I strum, I'm just going to set fire to myself. So, kind of like you, I think I'm just going to have to settle for being like a court jester for the local warlord. There'll probably be like regional warlords that take over in the apocalypse. And I'll just have to attach myself to them like a barnacle and try and make them laugh. And because I'm based in Leeds, the local warlord that'll take over will probably be Mel B from the Spice Girls. So just making Scary Spice laugh for the rest of time is what I'll be doing in the apocalypse.
Yeah, to be fair, I would watch you set yourself on fire playing a guitar. So...
Kath, in the apocalypse, that's the most entertainment you're going to be getting from anything. There's not going to be Netflix. Squid Game 2 is off the cards once Putin launches those nukes. So watching me set fire to myself in a pyro music spectacular is going to be the biggest entertainment draw since the Queen's Gambit.
But you could say the Queen's death. Well, also, I think that if Putin does set off the bomb, it will be the only way that a lot of us can stay warm this winter. So I'm all for it.
Historical hot or not?
I should probably explain the concept as well, in case anyone has decided to join us. Season 2, episode 2. It's an odd place to start, but fuck it, I'm all for it. Welcome, come join us. So
we're not really in a position to be picky or choosy about when people listen. We just need those hits.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter where on the episode spectrum it falls.
Yeah, so each episode, either myself or Aidan will have a little look through our fictional dating app called eTrothed. We'll pick some of history's most celebrated participants, describe their life and their times, and just see if the other one wants to fuck them or not. This episode,
that's what we do here.
It is. It's very highbrow. So this episode, it's about Margaret. She is 54 and she's from Grantham. Aidan, if you'd like to open up eTrothed. I first sent you a meme about KFC, but that's just for between us. And then secondary.
Did you mean send that to me?
I did, yeah, it made me laugh. But secondary to this KFC meme, I have sent you a picture of Maggie's eTrothed profile picture.
Your attempt to mask who this is by giving me the incorrect date of death of the person has totally failed, because I know where the famous Maggie was born already, because I know politics now.
I know. Would you? Looking at this picture.
Genuinely, and I'm not just saying this because I know who she is, I wouldn't. Because I genuinely think she looks like a man with a wig.
Okay, fair enough. You wouldn't bang a man then.
And it's not even a good haircut. It's a shit haircut. The thing is, I like to think of myself as being metrosexual, comfortable with all forms of the sexual spectrum, but genuinely, I just have no desire to have sex with a man. I actually quite admire men who aren't gay, who have. Like, they're just that, genuinely that experimental, that they've, like, sucked off a guy. Because I'm just like, I just couldn't do it. Maybe that makes me old-fashioned. Maybe that makes me a centrist dad, my refusal to suck a dick. God, what a centrist dad thing to do. Not even to suck off a guy when he's straight, Jesus. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, do you think she's hot? I don't think she's hot. She just looks like my granddad at that time, but with a weird haircut.
I think the haircut's too short, for sure. But I don't think she's not a bad-looking lass.
Well, she's not ugly, but she's not doing it for me at all. I'm flaccid as fuck right now, Kath.
I'd have a go on her if she offered, but I don't think she... Well, I mean, she can't now.
Catherine Mather, would you like to have a go? No, that's my Queen impression.
Don't ruin it, because some people...
Fuck, what's my impression?
Now, come on. Some people might not know.
Some people may not have figured out the great mystery of who this is.
No, because they have a really good bit further on where it's like the big reveal.
Oh, right, fair enough.
We're saying no from looks.
Looks on everything. Let's see if a personality can possibly win back. Hey, it's all to play for. It's definitely all to play for.
It really is. Margaret Roberts was born in Grantham, Lincolnshire, in 1925. Her dad, Alfred, owned a tobacconist and a grocer's, while her mum, Beatrice, was a woman. Which was enough in 1925. Her dad was an alderman and a Methodist local preacher, with Margaret being raised as a Christian, but she was sceptical, once telling a friend that she could not believe in angels, having calculated that they would need a breastbone 6 feet long to support wings, which I bet she was fun to be around at parties.
Genuinely, Kath, I actually am slightly attracted to her now.
Yeah, it's good, that, isn't it?
Yeah, I like how that's how her mind works. She's like, because it's the kind of anal shit I would have said in school. Just like, hang on, but the breastbone isn't big enough to support the wings, so actually, I think the angels will just fall out of the sky, actually. Love it.
In 1938, the family housed a young Jewish girl who had escaped Nazi Germany. In 1942-1943, she was head girl, and she worked as a volunteer fire watcher in the ARP service. I assume that means, like, watching out for fires and then telling somebody there's a fire so they can put them out, and not just going watching shit burn to the ground, because that would be useless.
It could just be a fancy name for someone attending a Guy Fawkes celebration.
Yeah, once a year. Would you be brave enough to volunteer in war?
That's a bit of a left turn. Well, for the purpose of the podcast and the broadcast, yes. And for the purpose of honesty, absolutely not. I'm too much of a physical coward. I like to think I would. Too much of a yellow streak. I slag off Trump a lot, but I'd be in that doctor's saying 50 quid, just write the word bone spurs on this document and I'll be out of your hair. So I'll be giving Trump high fives on the day World War III breaks out.
Yeah, I agree. I really admire the people. I want to write an episode, and I will, about like the SOE in World War II. And these are just like people who they got no extra money, and they just got like airdropped behind enemy lines to spy on shit and fuck stuff up.
Wow.
And yeah, and I just, like, I admire them so much because they got nothing from it, really, and they were almost certainly going to die, and I cannot imagine being that brave or stupid, whichever it is. But back to Margaret. In October 1943, she attended Oxford University on a scholarship. She graduated in 1947 with a second-class degree in chemistry. Did you do well at uni, Aidan?
No.
Oh, what did you get?
What do you think I got?
I mean, it's got to be a third, hasn't it, now?
I thought you might be kind. I got a third. It's really embarrassing.
You got a third, what in?
That's even worse. Theatre studies. It wasn't even something hard.
Oh my God, what?
Yeah, I know. I know I give off an air of erudite intelligence. Do you know what my problem is, Kath? I'm really lazy.
Yeah.
I've got better in my 30s because when you're in comedy, you can't really be lazy. You've kind of got to like really put yourself out there and put in the time.
Mm-hmm.
But even that, there's an element of that. Like I'm really trying to make up for the epic failure of my academic years because I just treated it as a bit of a lark. I remember at the time one of my best friends said, "But why would you spend £12,000 to just piss about for 3 years?" And I just was like, I don't know, it's just funny, isn't it? And now I look back like, God, he was so right. Like, what I mean, I enjoyed it and I made some great friends, but like, if I could change it, I'd do a different subject. I'd probably do history and politics, not theatre, because ultimately the degree hasn't affected anything. Like, even the jobs I've got in media, I could have got with a history degree, not a theatre studies degree. I did try quite hard at the performance stuff. I got really good marks for all my performance stuff, but I just had a habit of doing the essays like 2 days before the deadline or overnight drinking Coca-Cola. I'm genuinely embarrassed about it.
You're right to be.
Yeah, exactly. What about you? How did you do?
I got a 2-1 in construction.
Was it marked down from a first because that TARDIS you built wasn't bigger on the inside? It was just the right size on the inside.
Yeah, it was perfectly sized. No, so what happened was, it was so curiously, none of it was done on how good you were at building stuff. It was all done on the essay, which they never gave us enough time to write. So I did really badly on the essays, but at the end we had to do a dissertation, which I decided to do about comedy because I found a loophole in which I could do it about comedy. And I put quite a lot of effort into it. It's actually, if you go to katherinemather.com, you'll find some of my dissertation, which I then made into little articles, so that they're on there if you want to read some of my dissertation. But
no thanks.
No, it's right, don't worry. Yeah, I clawed the score back, and I just remember one of my tutors saying, "Imagine how well you could have done if you'd have tried, Catherine." I know. Imagine.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd also like to say that I went to university a bit later than you did, and my debt is £54,000.
Fucking hell.
Uh-huh.
Do you know what? I'm often blasé about student debt because I'm sort of with the Martin Lewis line of like, it's a graduate tax, and if we're left wing, that's how we think things should be paid for. And politicians misrepresent it as a debt, not a tax.
Yeah.
But I also only paid 12k for my degree. So it's like I'm sort of in a position I can do that. And when I finally paid it off a couple of years ago, even just that £100 a month was like a weight off my shoulder.
Yeah.
Your poor, sad generation, Kath, are just going to be carrying that
forever.
Decades and decades. Basically, forever. It probably won't pay it back.
No, absolutely not, no.
Yeah.
They put interest on it, for fuck's sake.
How come you did your degree so late?
Well, I was very anti-university. I didn't want to go because I was like, well, so when I was at college, they would make us write personal statements, and all of it was geared towards you going to university. And I was like, well, it's a lot of money. I don't know what I want to do, and I'd just be going for the sake of it, really. So I didn't. And then what happened was I spent quite a long time working in various jobs that I absolutely hated. And I was like, this cannot be how it ends. I need to do something. So I went...
Once you sold that 1,000 sausage roll at Greg's, you were like, fuck this, I'm building a TARDIS.
Yeah, I cannot do this. So I decided to go to university. And I'll be honest with you, if anybody is listening to this for serious advice on whether to go to university or not, I would say do it in a subject that you find interesting and that you think will have some kind of use. For example, none of my work has been anything to do with the degree I did, and I'll be honest, I didn't really enjoy university. But it did mean that I could move to London, which has been wonderful. I've met the best people here in London, and I learnt a lot of practical skills from my degree, so it wasn't a waste of time. It wasn't worth £54,000, but I feel like I got stuff from it. But that's not funny. That's just advice.
Anyway, mysterious Maggie, who I definitely don't know the identity of.
No, so her first boyfriend, Tony, described her as very thoughtful and a very good conversationalist. She was good at general subjects, and her parents were slightly austere and very proper. In 1946, she became president of the Oxford University Conservative Association. After graduating, she moved to Colchester in Essex to work as a research scientist for BX Plastics, and became more deeply involved in the Conservative Party. And at age 24, she became a candidate for the Conservative Association in Dartford, Kent. Fucking Kent. She was also a member of the Vermin Club, which is a band of cheeky young Conservatives who named themselves after the Labour MP Nye Bevan had said that the Conservative Party were lower than vermin at a rally in Manchester. Margaret rose to chief rat in that club, which I think is like the boss, and at its height it had up to 120,000 members, which is fucking insane.
I admire anyone who owns an insult. I mean, as
Yeah.
comedians, we very much have to lean into our failures, so I tip my hat to those Tory rats owning the insults.
In February 1949, she met divorced businessman Dennis Thatcher, whom she...
What?
I know, oh my god, suddenly we've all just figured out who this episode's about.
It's just clocked. I can't believe it.
Yeah, fuck. So she described Dennis as not a very attractive creature. Very, very reserved, but quite nice.
Pot calling the kettle black. Fucking hell, Maggie.
On the 13th of December 1951, they were married at Wesley's Chapel in London. People in those days did not fuck about with getting it locked down, did they? So how long is an appropriate time to wait to get married? Like, between meeting and marrying, do you reckon?
Didn't you just ask this in the bonus pod we just recorded?
This is a sincere question, because we were talking about Juliet Capulet, and they got married a day after meeting each other. But I guess it's like 2 years.
But then if you're really young, no. Like, if you're 20, you shouldn't. Yeah, you've got to live your life, even if it's living your life with that person.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, and I'm being sincere now, you're not the same person as when you're 26 as you were when you were 21. You're not the same person when you're 31 when you're 26. But the clay does harden over the years. So it's just too young to get married. I mean, I'd probably say 25 is the earliest you should get married. Obviously, after that, you dick around less because you don't waste time after that point. So you're not going to think, I'll give it 5 years when you're 31. You've kind of got to decide early on, is this actually real, is this serious, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But in your early 20s, you've got time to kill.
Yeah, because I think as well, you need at least a year to understand what that other person is like, and ideally you want to have lived with them before you do any of this settling down legally thing, right? Because, yeah, people can be unbearable.
But hey, what do we know? Because I'm pretty sure Margaret, and it was Dennis, her husband's name? I mean, they were together till death did them part. So what do we know?
Well, yeah, they did all right. together, maybe not by the country. So she was a Conservative candidate for Dartford in 1950 and 1951. She lost both times, but she reduced the Labour majority significantly both of those times. Around this time, she was studying to pass the bar, which Dennis funded, and in 1953 she qualified as a barrister specialising in taxation, and also gave birth to her twins, Carol and Mark, prematurely by caesarean section. Big fucking year, 1953, for old Maggie. In 1955, she decided not to stand in the election because she said that the children were small, which is fair, but she was chosen as the candidate for the Conservative safe seat of Finchley in 1958 and was elected as MP in 1959 when she was aged 34. In October 1961, she was promoted to the front benches, although this was short-lived as the Tories lost the election in 1964. After this, she became a spokeswoman on housing and land, in which she advocated the party's policy of giving tenants the right to buy their council houses, which went really well and had no long-term repercussions at all. And then she ended up in the Shadow Treasury. So, Aidan, we're going to do a little question. What do you think Margaret's views were, voting-wise, on the following? A bill to decriminalise male homosexuality.
Obviously against.
She was in favour of that.
Well, hang on, but she wasn't when she was Prime Minister. Well, sorry. What's that clause that was in? Was it clause 28?
Yeah.
Section 28, which would basically said you're not allowed to talk about gay people in front of kids in schools.
Yeah.
So you would have thought she wouldn't want to decriminalise homosexuality, but
yeah. I'm going to speculate here that the logic could be the Tories kind of don't want to get involved in people's lives, do they? So that it'd be like, well, yeah, you can do it, but don't tell the kids about it, sort of thing, maybe. I don't know. I don't care about what this horrible woman thinks. Trade unions, how do you think she felt about them?
I think she wanted to smash them in their faces until they bled their communist red blood everywhere. That's what she wanted.
Yeah, she was very against them, actually. She hit them so hard that they still struggle today. Capital punishment. Why do you think she's done that?
Thing is, I'm going to try and be generous because I don't have positive feelings about it. I'm going to try and be generous where possible. I think she was against capital punishment.
No, she was in favour of that. Scottish devolution?
Against.
Yeah, she was against that. There was a bill to legalise abortion.
Against.
She was in favour of that.
Oh! Check out pinko liberal woke Maggie in favour of murdering fetuses.
Well, yeah. Apartheid.
Again, I'm going to try and be generous and say that she was against apartheid.
Yes, technically.
Because, but even though I know that actually she did brand Mandela and people as terrorists in the 80s, and I'm not justifying this, I suspect that's because while she was against apartheid in theory, she probably just had a slightly realpolitik view of political alliances, which is why she sides with the African government over the people that wanted to oppose it. That's my logic behind the thinking there.
Yeah, so I think she was technically against it. However, and there is a very good episode of The Crown, the Margaret Thatcher episode of it. It sort of goes into why she didn't really do anything when she could have done things against the South African government. And that was because her son, Mark, had business in South Africa. So she kind of supported it for all the right reasons.
You've just reminded me of Sexy Thatcher.
Yeah?
As played by Gillian Anderson in that show.
Yes. Yeah, it's pretty hot.
That was a
confusing time, right? Next, a ban on hair coursing.
Remind me what hair coursing is?
I think it's just like, when rich people kill animals because they can.
I'm going to say she's against the ban.
No, she was in favour of the ban. Relaxation of divorce laws.
For?
No, she was against those. Once you're in, you're in.
As her and Dennis proved, they were true to their word.
Yeah.
Courage of their convictions, them two.
Yeah. Don't worry, I've only got 3 more. Protecting us from climate change.
No, Kath, I think this whole episode should be going through every law that she voted on, and I've got to guess on these hundreds of laws that she had to vote on throughout her career. That can be a bonus bag in future.
Yeah. Really boring one. So, protecting us from climate change.
I'm going to say 4. And the reason I said that was because Nixon, another contemporary Conservative, he founded the EPA. So it's like a weird thing. Like there wasn't in the past a strong tradition of like nature and countryside loving conservatives who wanted to protect it.
Yeah.
But once the old oil men whispered in their ear, they're like, "Oh no, fuck that." So yes, we remembered where our loyalties lie. The EU. Oh, I think she wanted to be in it.
Yeah, she was in favour of the EU. There's that famous picture of her wearing that jumper, isn't there? Awful jumper with all the flags.
Because in the 70s, it was like the left wanted out. They didn't want to go into it because they just thought it was some like corporate trap. And it was the right that wanted into it because they thought it was some corporate trap. Anyway.
Finally, where do you think she stood on Enoch Powell's 1968 Rivers of Blood speech?
I think she was against it.
So here's what she had to say about that. He had made a valid argument in sometimes regrettable terms.
Yeah, just a little bit regrettable. What was
Slightly.
it? I mean, there's regrettable and there's just a total cunt speech, is how I describe Rivers of Blood speech.
But I wanted to do that with her sort of voting history, just because I think it's interesting to sort of put that against, you know, the sort of the right wing now, you know, particularly with like the abortion laws and things, you know, when you look in America. I want to make it clear here, I don't like Thatcher, and I'm not a Tory. But, you know, if you look, her sort of, her views are very much you do you, whereas now I feel like the right wing is maybe getting a little bit more involved in people's personal lives.
Well, you're right. It's like in America now, like the Republican Party are all up in women's vaginas, like a tampon wearing an open carry pistol. They're very much like small government don't interfere unless it's something we don't like gays or women having any kind of autonomy over their twats. And then that situation, they very much want to be involved in people's lives.
Yeah. It's like the only good thing about the Tories is like, well, they won't involve themselves, and oh, no, they have done. Okay, well, there we go.
Yeah, the one thing they had going for them is like, well, just let everyone be who they are. Oh no, except half the population and the gay people that are friends with them.
So this next bit of the podcast, I mean, so this isn't a deep dive. It would be a lot. It would be hours and hours of material for this to be a deep dive. So basically, it's just going to be like a light brushing of all the horrible shit that she did with the power that she had. We're not going to be going into anything deeply. I can give you some places to have a look if you want to. We'll stick them in the comments. But
going into nothing deeply, except maybe her vagina, if I say yes. And I'm just saying that just to create a little air of tension that maybe I will, even though, let's be honest, I almost certainly won't.
No,
but let's go on anyway.
You absolutely won't, no. Okay, so in 1970, the Conservative Party won the general election under Ted Heath, and Margaret became Secretary of State for Education and Science, which kind of makes sense because she done science at uni. Within days, she withdrew Labour's Circular 1065, which attempted comprehensivisation, which basically meant that all schools would be accessible to all people. She didn't consult anybody when she did this, and it was extremely unpopular. She also attempted budget cuts by prioritising academic schools that were in need, and she cut funding for free milk for children aged 7 to 11, earning her the nickname Margaret Thatcher. Milk Snatcher.
Yay.
1974, the Conservatives lost the election again. Yay! And on the 11th of February 1975, Thatcher became leader of the opposition and the face of the ideological movement against the British welfare state. What a good guy.
Top lass.
Yeah. The winter of 1978-1979 was dubbed the Winter of Discontent. Labour held an election in 1979 and lost because it was the winter of discontent. And therefore Thatcher became the first female Prime Minister.
Do you, as a feminist, feel any kind of pleasure to her victory there, or any gratitude to her for smashing that glass ceiling with her fist that was covered in the blood of unionised workers? I don't know. How do you feel about it?
See, this was a point that I think I was going to try and make at the end, because I think that Margaret Thatcher confuses my feminism, as she does a lot. It upsets me that the Conservative Party are the only people they've put 3 women as prime ministers, and I think it's sad that the left haven't done that. But Thatcher particularly, I think she confuses my feminism. Because on the one hand, I guess she was maybe not working class, but not the sort of Etonian upper class that we have now. She was the first female prime minister. She wasn't afraid to go against the grain and challenge the old guard. She sort of went against what all of these posh old men were doing in the establishment. She had her own ideas. She was a strong leader. She stood by her guns, but she pulled the ladder up behind herself, didn't she? She didn't open the door for other women. She opened the door for her as a woman. She didn't really like the fact that she was a woman. I don't think she had quite traditional values. She was wrong. She stood by her convictions, but she was incorrect. So it's hard, isn't it?
I think you made a good case for not feeling like you owe her anything.
No.
One thing I like about her is something that you mentioned. I like that she does not give a flying fuck what anyone thinks. And even though I disagree with almost all of her policies, I get annoyed by politicians these days who are just so desperate to kind of be liked. Do you know what I mean?
She stood for something.
Yeah, I just wish more of them actually had that sort of slight Thatcherite, maybe even slightly Blairite, just like, no, fuck it, I think this is right, and I'm just going to plough on with this. And hopefully the public will sort of come with me in time for the next election. I do genuinely admire that. It wasn't just true of the public, it was the party. She always didn't really give a shit what the party felt.
No.
She wasn't just some, mouthpiece for the party, which often the leader can be, or even arguably should be. And I do sort of weirdly admire that. Enough to fuck her? That's another question, Kath. We'll get to that shortly.
Yeah, I guess I feel the same way about Thatcher as I do about everybody that has won RuPaul's Drag Race. I don't like her as a person. I couldn't see us hanging out. I think she's incorrect on a lot of stuff. But I admire her.
But what a pair of heels.
Yeah, I admire her spirit. We called our metal saw at university Margaret, because it was the Iron Lady.
She stood by her guns, her horrible...
Wrong guns.
Her horrible tax-cutting, pro-apartheid guns.
Yes. Yeah, oh yeah, I need to make it clear that I do not agree with any of her politics, any of her opinions. Well, maybe the abortion one and it's grey, isn't it? But fuck her, absolutely fuck her, but also...
Don't worry about anyone listener thinking that in any way you might be a Thatcherite. I mean, it's pretty much from you saying, hello, my name's Kath and Mather. Even just from that, people are like, this girl's going to fucking hate 80s Toryism.
Yeah, I do. The recession of the early 1980s deepened and Thatcher decided to increase taxes, which caused her job approval rating to fall to 23% by December 1980, lower than recorded for any previous Prime Minister. For context, Liz Truss, at the time of recording, is currently at 27% approval rating, having killed the Queen and tanked the economy within weeks of becoming the Prime Minister.
Also, at the time of recording, Liz Truss is the Prime Minister, but who knows, anything could change in the weeks before we release this pod.
By 1982, the economy had started to recover, but unemployment was still at around 30%, which was the highest since before the Second World War, and it wasn't until 1987 that this started to fall. In 1984-1985, Thatcher faced down the coal miners in the miners' strike after trying to close 20 of the 174 state-owned mines and cut 20,000 jobs out of 187,000 miners. After a year of striking, which is a long time, isn't it? They made a deal, but the strike was estimated to have cost the economy at least £1.5 billion. By the early 90s, 150 mines had been closed out of 174. The remainder of them had been privatised, tens of thousands were out of work, and entire communities remain devastated to this day. Thatcher also privatised gas, water and electricity, which again has gone really well, and none of those things had long-lasting consequences. She says in her cold house, because none of us can afford to fucking heat them at the moment.
You could probably make an argument for unions being too powerful, maybe at that point. I hate that Thatcherite attitude of you put an entire community out of work. and then you just act like they just need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. That's not how economics works. You can't close off an entire community and then expect all of them to open, corner shops. It's mental. It's what annoys me about the Tories, the perception of the Tories is they always have this image of being, they're the party of good economics. They're the party of fiscal sense. And actually, it's not true. Right-wing economic policy has led to the biggest financial crashes in the last 120 years, the 1929 crash and the 2008 crash. And yet they still get so much credit on it. Do you know what I mean? I mean, that might be changing now with what Truss and Quanting have done. But God, it annoys me. And I'm not going to lie, there is no joke within 100 miles of this little rant that I'm having. But it really fucks me off. Really fucks me off.
With Thatcher sort of ripping out the heart of these communities and taking all the jobs away, they seem to sort of be saying now, don't they, well, why don't you just get a better job? And I think that's probably the point that she was trying to make there. There's no such thing as society, just get a better job. And it's like they always want you to have more, isn't it? Like more wealth, more things. I think they don't understand that there's pride in working class communities and they don't want more, they just want enough. Like at the moment, they keep saying, well, why don't you just get a better job? It's like, well, I don't want a better job. Because, first of all, what does better mean? I'm quite happy in my job. I just want enough to be able to live off and not be worried all the time. And I don't think they fully appreciate that people are happy with enough.
Not everyone can be aspirational, because then surely society would cease to function. Because you need people collecting bins, you need people doing service industry jobs.
Yeah.
Again, just another little example of how Tories do not understand how economies work. You can hear a slurping noise in the background. I'm recording this next to a bowl of water that my cats have now decided that me recording this podcast is the perfect time to drink their own body weight in H2O.
It's Aidan drinking from a bowl.
Yeah, Thatcher ripped the heart out of these communities. But will she rip my heart out in a fit of sexual passion? I'm trying so hard to bring this, what is essentially becoming a polemic against free market economics, back to the sex and history theme that this podcast is meant to be. As you were, Kath.
Yeah, don't worry. We've only got a few more of her horrible things that she's done, and then we'll. And this is not an exhaustive list, by the way. Please look into her if you like. No, I just want to know exactly why my life is fucked up now. Why can't I buy a house? Why am I stuck in substandard private rental properties?
Well, Kath, if you didn't buy 10 Starbucks coffees a year, then maybe you could afford the 500 grand it costs to buy a one-bedroom flat in London. Am I right?
If Starbucks paid some tax.
If you ate less smashed avocado on toast, then maybe you could afford to smash your way into the housing market. I think that's how it works, right, Kath?
Well, yeah, 100%, because avocados are very expensive.
Well, did you know one avocado is worth 10 grand, which is the same as a deposit on a small flat in the north of England. So really got yourself to blame.
I have, yeah. So she refused to give Bobby Sands and other members of the IRA status as political prisoners, leading to the deaths of many hunger strikers and violence in Northern Ireland. The IRA almost managed to kill Thatcher. While she was...
Hey, whoa, might have to distance myself from that, but sure, go.
Sorry.
You do you, Kath.
Sorry, I'll do that again. The IRA almost managed to kill Thatcher. Boo.
I really thought you were just going to say yay again for a second there.
Delete is appropriate. While she was staying at a hotel in Brighton in 1984, they didn't manage to kill her, but they did manage to kill 5 others. Take from that what you will. There was that thing, wasn't there, where they were like, we've only got to succeed once, but you've got to succeed loads of times. It was like a thing that they said to the IRA said to Thatcher, and then somebody took it and put it on those motivational posts that your mum puts on Facebook. People were sharing it
against an image of a nice wooded glade, but with that on the front. And your mum is like, oh, that'll make some lovely wallpaper on my desktop.
Do you know who said that? During the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, she funded the Mujahideen, who you may well know as the Taliban now.
That was one of the greatest plot twists of the 20th century, wasn't it? That all those soldiers we armed in Afghanistan just came back and absolutely fucked us over for a decade.
Who saw that coming? In a report by the Financial Times, it was also reported that she secretly supplies Saddam Hussein with non-lethal military equipment in the 1980s. She let the US station more than 160 cruise missiles at RAF Grantham Common in 1983, resulting in mass protest by CND. She bought Trident, the nuclear missile, tripling the UK's nuclear forces at a cost of £12 billion, something that we never hear about anymore. 1982, she went to war with Argentina over the Falkland Islands for 10 weeks. Although neither side actually declared war, 907 people were killed in total. Britain kind of won, although it was very messy, and this helped Thatcher to win her second election.
Yeah, this whole they were at war, they never declared war, but they are. I mean, it's all nonsense, isn't it? It's like Russia hasn't technically been at war for the past few months with Ukraine. It's been a special military operation. It's kind of like when two people are fucking for months. Like, we're not in a relationship. And it's like, well, your genitals in a relationship. I think very much makes you in a relationship, whether you want to put a capital R on that or an exclusivity clause on that, either way.
Yeah. You're killing kids, you're at war, as my grandmother always used to say.
Yeah, one of Granny Mather's many great phrases. Nothing kills a pogrom like a wide-on, her most famous. Sorry, nothing kills a wide-on like a pogrom. Yeah. Carry on.
Yeah, as they call them in the business.
Yeah.
In 1989 for Scotland and 1990 for the rest of the UK, Thatcher introduced the poll tax, in which domestic rates, which was a tax charged proportional to the rental value of the home that you lived in, it was replaced by a flat fee for every adult, which was, as I'm sure you can imagine, very unpopular, and around 17 million people refused to pay the poll tax. This is actually often cited as the reason for her downfall. On the 28th of November 1990, Thatcher was ousted as PM and replaced by former bus driver John Major. She was real pissed about it. She returned to the back benches. Yeah. She returned to the back benches and stopped being an MP at the age of 66 in 1992, which was the year I was born. She did a bunch of other stuff after that, but this episode is getting quite long. So we'll fast forward to 2005, when her daughter Carol announced that she had dementia, and she subsequently died of a stroke on the 8th of April 2013, aged 87. At this point, she'd moved into the Ritz in London as she was struggling with the stairs at home.
You think Thatcher would be able to afford a Stena stairlift, of all people?
Right. Well, I mean, when the other option's the Ritz, I think I'd do that one.
Well, exactly, yeah.
I've got two questions for you here, Aidan. The first one, what kind of hotel do you think you'd move into if you could no longer manage the stairs? What would be in your price range?
I know I always in my stand-up bang on about how wonderfully middle class I am, but I don't really have, I have no spare cash. I'm kind of that level of middle class where it's like, I've got a mortgage, but I had to put every last penny into it, and now I can't go on all the nice holidays I used to go on. It's one or the other. So you're talking Travelodge, I'm afraid. I think that's going to be my average. But you know what? I don't think I'd mind that. I don't think Travelodges are that bad. I'm very much like, is it clean? No. Can I shit? Can I shower? I can do all those things. So I actually sort of see the appeal that Alan Partridge had in living his life in a travel. Well, it's called a travel tavern in that show.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's probably going to be a Travelodge, I'm afraid. I've got like quite a lot of Avios points at the moment. I've got enough to like blow 2 or 3 days on a 5-star hotel. So I'll do that and then spend the rest of my sorry, Alzheimer's-ridden pensionerhood in a Travelodge, having all-you-can-eat breakfasts. What about you, Kath?
Yeah, I think it would be like Premier in Scunthorpe that I'd be dying in. Yeah. But again, like you say, people shit on those chain hotels. I have stayed in a privately owned B&B in Blackpool in which there was semen on the sheets. So
how is Reese?
Not. Stop saying his name.
I promise you, I'll cut it.
Good. Also, on that trip, so I did stand up about this, not anymore because it wasn't a very good bit, but I had taken an ex-boyfriend. He was my boyfriend at the time, and he was from the south, and I took him to Blackpool to be like, look, this is a good time, and not all small northern towns are backwards, and I shit you not, we'd walked out of the car park and there were 3 lads joyriding a pony and trap just down the street. And I was like, all right, maybe we are a bit backwards.
Kath, why did you pick Blackpool as a place to show that isn't... I went there for a gig recently, and there's like a strip club on the beachfront.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's great.
Not a good-looking strip club. It's like above a fish and chip shop. It looks like the kind of place where the strippers are going to be 60 years old and they're going to be like eating chips out of an old newspaper wrapper while they pole dance.
What's not to love about that, Aidan? They have got the Pleasure Beach. Blackpool Pleasure Beach is the best. I freaking love Blackpool Pleasure Beach. They've got Madame Tussauds, they've got the Sea Life Centre, they've got Blackpool Tower, they've got Blackpool motherfucking Tower. Oh, it's so good in there. I love it. They've got fish and chips, they've got a beach, they've got beautiful trams. Every year they have the illuminations. Are they the same lights that they put up every year since my infancy? Yes. Is it fun that you can buy a swizzly stick that has lights on it out of a car in November? Yeah, I fucking love it. It's amazing.
You say all this. You went into Blackpool with a boyfriend. Did you leave with a boyfriend? That's the only question you have to ask yourself.
I did, but we were both heading south and he'd driven.
You were heading south both geographically because you were going down the M6 and metaphorically in relationship because you'd broken up within days.
Yeah, exactly.
Historical hot or not?
Oh, the other question I wanted to ask you, of course, Aidan, what were you doing when Thatcher died?
Oh, just rubbing one out with pure ecstasy. When that Guardian News alert came through, stiff as a board. No, I was on the Central Line between Shepherd's Bush and Ealing Broadway. I remember very vividly because I was working in broadcast at the time doing subtitling for the BBC News. And when you, for BBC, sorry, and when you work in subtitling, the worst thing that can happen to your day, especially to me as like a manager of workflow, which is essentially what I was doing, is the death of a big figure, of a big dog, of top British brass. Because it just basically means the whole day gets rearranged. Where you thought there would just be repeats of file subtitles going out, where you didn't have to do anything, you've suddenly got to throw not just subtitles, but the best subtitles in the business. You have to put them on air so they can live caption all the stuff they're saying about Thatcher. Can't be wrong. You can't lose any subs because the BBC will be annoyed at you. Well, we were a big client of the BBC. Basically, yeah, it was just an annoying day of work for me. I'm only happy that I got out of that business before Old Liz 2 dropped, because that would have been a hell of a day. Hell of a day. What about you? Where were you when Thatcher dropped?
I think I was also a manager, but it was of a children's soft play centre. Kind of different. I was at the best party I've ever been to. It was a birthday party, and then someone at some point in the evening was like, "And Thatcher's dead," and we're all like, "Yay!"
Could this party get any better?
Yeah, and I'll tell you more about that party off air.
Because you had sex in the ball pit.
I did have sex in the ball pit. The party wasn't at the Children's Play Centre, it was at my friend's house.
Oh, okay.
So when Thatcher died, the song Ding Dong the Witch is Dead made its way to number 2 in the charts. The BBC refused to play the full 51 seconds of the song. And I remember this, they would just give like a little nod to it. Do you remember that on the radio? It's just like, ding dong, the witch. Anyway, so number 3 in the charts is...
I mean, not playing a song that's only 51 seconds long, that's very much a reverse Bohemian Rhapsody. It's like, do we play the full thing at 6 minutes long? Do we play the full thing? It's only 51 seconds long. I was like, I know, but it would cause great social damage to the country, even to just hear barely a minute of that thing.
Yeah, the people have spoken. She had a ceremonial funeral with full military honours and a church service at St Paul's Cathedral on the 17th of April 2013, which the Queen and Prince Philip attended. So this was only the second Prime Minister's funeral that the Queen had attended. Who was the first one, do you think?
Sorry, hang on. It was only the second Prime Minister's funeral that the Queen had attended?
Yeah, I was quite surprised actually about that. I thought that she would just sort of go to all of them as standard.
I mean, it's got to be Churchill, right?
Yeah, it's Churchill. Thatcher was, I think she was like 6 months older than the Queen or something. Also, Marilyn Monroe was the same age as Queen and Thatcher. So, there you go.
I suppose that's the one advantage of dying young. Because I just thought, what?
Yeah.
Really? You know, because your only image of Marilyn is as a stunning young blonde woman.
I was going to say she had the decency to die young.
Yeah, exactly.
Margaret was buried with her husband Dennis at the Royal Hospital, Chelsea's Margaret Thatcher Infirmary. That is the end of the episode. Before we get your judgment, which I think we all know, I would like to credit my good friend Wikipedia, the BBC and Spiked for the information that I smushed into this episode. So, Aidan, would you fuck Thatcher?
No.
Still no.
I'd like to say I decided that at the beginning of the episode. I didn't. I decided that about 2 decades ago when I found out who she was and what she did. Although it just raised an interesting question. Would I have sex with a Tory? Because I'm not... I'm left-wing, sure. I'm down with the kids. I'm a democratic socialist. I'm rad. But I actually do think I get on with Tories because I genuinely don't like that sort of attitude you get with some leftists. That, like, anything to the right of Tony Benn is therefore Nazism. I really don't like that attitude. And I don't like that sort of left-wing gatekeeping that goes on. Anyway, question, would I have sex with a Tory? Yeah, I probably would. Because ultimately on a first date, no one's asking about political preferences, are they?
No.
So probably would. But also, the real reason I would have sex with Tories is, like, I've been through droughts. Hey, sure, we all have. If you're in the middle of a desert, you find a bottle of water, you don't check to see if it says Nestle on the side, do you? You just take what you can get when you can get it. So,
you suck that dick dry. I hear you, Aidan. I really do.
You suck that dick dry. It doesn't matter whether that is a true blue dick. It doesn't matter whether that's got that Tory wreath pinned to the side of that